Stealth project was different than the other projects I've done. All the other ones have been renovations. The Stealth was a brand new design from scratch. We were building our own molds, and we were going to take this boat and market it. So we were really building a company at the same time.
Back in 2013, I show up at Bart's shop. I go into his office, and here he has created a cardboard boat. I'm like,
The pontoon market was exploding back then, and every boat show we did, they were selling more pontoons, and I was just watching these guys making money hand over fist, and I'm like, I want in on that gravy train. But you know me, like, I have to do something different. I can't just build a regular pontoon boat. So I was like, wow, you know, what would it look like if Riva built a pontoon? You know, I was trying to like channel their designers, like, what would they do? So I started messing around, and I made this little cardboard model, and not really thinking much of it other than, you know, it just seemed like kind of a fun little side project.
Side project.
So I put it on my desk, and then everybody that walked in was like, what is that? That is so cool. You guys got to build that. Well, we didn't do anything with it for 5 years. But when the timing was finally right in 2018, we decided to build it. And I took on the challenge. I said, yeah, I'll do it. I'll tool it. You know, I'll build the plugs and the patterns and do everything. But the only problem was the Minneapolis Boat Show was 10 months away.
10 months.
And we had nothing other than my little cardboard model. And so I knew it was going to be a crazy challenge. And not only that, to make it worse, we had to do a photo shoot before the water froze.
It's cold.
Which in Minnesota, you know, that means you better be in the water in October.
At the latest.
Yeah, so I think that gave me, 219 days or something from the day that we started till, well, like the last feasible day of a photo shoot. And, you know, I mean, most boat companies, if they tool a new boat, I mean, it's a big team of people, and they probably spend a year or two doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I was one guy.
One guy.
One guy.
219 days.
And we were going to do it electric.
Yes,
That
we
was
did electric.
like, well, let's pile on some more challenge. So not only that, it was going to be electric and a proprietary driveline. So we had to do that at the same time. And so, yeah, it was nuts. It was nuts. So, you know, when we started the project, we figured, well, we're going to have to hire a naval architect because, you know, what do we know about designing a hull? And I knew one. I had taken a course from him, oddly, on multi-hull design. And so I called him up and I emailed him some photos and some specifications, and then we spoke on the phone about it. And he was interested in the project, but our timeline just didn't really work with his schedule. He had a lot of other projects he was doing, and so I said, well, what do you think we should do? Do you know somebody else we should work with, or what are your thoughts? And he said, well, to be honest, he said, based on what you guys are doing, you know, you're basically doing a low-speed displacement hull. He said, I think you guys can do it yourself. He said, you know, there's no magic in a pontoon hull. He said, you know, it's two round tubes that are pointy at the end. And he said, you guys aren't doing all that much different than that. And he said, you know, I think you just do your calculations for your flotation, get what you need, and go ahead and do it. And he gave me some pointers and some things to think through, and he gave me the confidence that we could probably just do it ourselves, and that's exactly what we did. So we decided to just go ahead and move forward with the project. So once we had made the decision to go ahead and build this boat, it was time to get to work. We had a really tight timeline, and there was no time to waste. So we had an old cat hull laying around the shop, and we were using that to do flotation tests. And we'd bring big bags of salt out there and move the salt around, and simulating people and figuring out where we needed more buoyancy and what we would need. And so after doing our tests, we brought that old cat hull in the shop, and we kind of cut it apart and just had nothing left but the under structure of it, and we turned it upside down. And then I measured it off and sectioned it at every foot. and then I did a calculation of the volume of each foot of that hull, and then a buoyancy calculation, and then added in what I thought we would need based on our tests. And it turned out that we needed way more buoyancy than that old catamaran hull had. We would have to modify it extensively if it was going to work for us. So before we started at all, I wanted to make sure that we didn't do all this work and then have any legal problems from using even any of this old hull. So we researched the Vessel Hull Protection Act and found that we were completely in the clear that old hull was in the public domain. It was made pre Vessel Hull Protection Act, and so we were free to use it. And like I say, we were barely using any of it anyway. And quite honestly, in retrospect, I kind of wish we hadn't used it at all. I think we would have had a better hull. But at the time, with the given tight timeline, we decided to go ahead. And so I started building off it, and I basically started screwing plywood to it and building our plug pattern, and started down the sides, added lift strakes, kind of planing strakes to the bottom surface, and then just started building up from there. And I think it was about 37 days total before that thing was done and ready to go to the mold shop. So that was a big milestone. That was the first thing that had to be done. The hull, we kind of had it worked out that, the hull had to get done first. We had to get that mold done. We had to get the first parts made, and then we would build the deck plug off of the actual first hull. So once that went off to the mold shop, then we started working on the electric drive line, and while we waited for the first hull. And then when the molds were done and the first hull was pulled, I went and got it and brought it back to the shop. And then immediately, like within hours, I was working on the deck plug, and started. We knew exactly what it needed to be based on the model that we had made, and so once I had that modeled, then that went back to the mold shop. And then they tooled the deck mold, and then then we had to wait. So then we were again back to building driveline and electric battery packs and all that. And this boat was going to have a proprietary driveline. It was something that we designed ourselves, and originally. We were going to try to do sort of an inboard driveline in what I would call a center tune, kind of like a tri-tune, but that center tune only went about maybe a third of the way up the hull. And that's what we actually finished and had for the first water test, but we learned real quick that it didn't work. It didn't work very well. We didn't have good steering, and it caused a lot of drag. And we ended up scrapping that idea. We ended up putting a plug in the mold and making that a flat surface there. And then we built an articulating electric driveline that was our own design, and we did that from scratch. I started that with a cardboard model, and we call it the Predator drive because it kind of looks like that movie Alien and Predator kind of looks like that. And inside of it was an electric motor attached to a straight shaft, running through a cutlass bearing, a standard inboard style drive with a rudder behind it, and then we had a cooling tank in there that would exchange water, and that would cool the engine and a cooling plate for the motor controller. And then that whole thing articulated and tilted up and down. So that thing could tilt up, so that whole thing could be set flat on the whole boat could be set flat on the ground, just like a pontoon with the motor tilted up. We thought that was important. It was something people did with pontoons, and we were kind of, even though we were a catamaran, we were kind of going after that market. So we thought that was important to be able to do that. So once the deck mold was done, we got the original plug back in the shop, and then I used it to mark exactly where all the cutouts were going to be. And this thing was going to be cut out like Swiss cheese. There were so many cabinets and speakers and seats, and so I took that original plug and then I put X's everywhere there was going to be a cutout, and then sent that back to the mold shop. And because I wanted them to know which surfaces, you know, they wouldn't have to waste fiberglass on because they're going to get cut out anyway. So they needed a good understanding of you know, which sections needed to be strong and which sections were going to get cut out and all of that. So that we used that plug, and that made a really good pattern for them to lay out where was going to get cut out and where wasn't. So then came the day when we finally got the first deck part, and then it was my job to actually cut out all of the holes where everything was going to go and cut them out accurately, and then that needed to be brought back to the mold shop, where then they would mark that off on a cutting jig so that every one of them would come cut the way that I had done. So no room for error there, because if you screw that up, you got to get it's time to get a new deck, you got to start all over. So, you know, a little bit nerve-wracking, and especially given how many holes were cut in that thing. There was a lot. Like I say, it looked like Swiss cheese. I mean, there was holes everywhere. So that was the next thing to get done and get that back to the mold shop. And of course, you know, in the process of cutting that out, we had to fit the cabinets in there and make sure the holes were right, make sure the cabinets were where we wanted them, and all of that. And so once we got that back, then it was time to start building the first boat. So now we had our first hull, we had our first deck, and there were a few other pieces that needed to be done too. There were some parts for the seating that kind of completed it, that couldn't be part of the deck mold, or they would have made you know, a negative in the mold so it wouldn't come out of the mold. So those had to be separate parts. So we were working on those while we were waiting, you know, for our first parts to come back. And so all this was kind of going on at the same time. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces going on. And so when we finally got that first deck back from the mold shop, you know, it was time to start putting the first boat together. And so really, you know, the first thing we had to do is get our electric drive line in there before we could put the deck on. And so we had built this huge battery pack that weighed about 450 pounds. And that went right in the middle, in the back, under the back seat. And then the next thing was our articulating drive line that we had designed. And that had to mount underneath the hull, and all the cables run up to the battery pack and to the motor controller and all that. And then the next thing to do was to go ahead and put the deck on. We ran the regular 12-volt wiring underneath first, and then the deck went on. So the next thing, you know, we get the deck on there, and then it's time to start bonding stuff together and start really finishing out the boat. One of the things that we had decided really early on in the project is we really wanted some nice cabinetry, and we wanted a full-size garbage, a pull-out full-size garbage and recycling. We wanted a place for a full-size cooler to fit out of the way. We wanted some lockable storage, and we just wanted to really do that better than what we'd seen done. So many boats, even some of the nicest new boats that we'd been on, it was like a garbage was just something that hadn't been thought of. And there's always a bag hanging off some chair somewhere. And we really wanted to do a better job of that. And so we partnered up with our friends at Teak Isle. They just did a great job for us. They made some really cool cabinetry, really nice stuff on nice roller slides, and we had one when we get onto the boat. You'd walk in, and there was a big drawer for a cooler, and then above it a smaller drawer for utensils, and then we had lockable storage under the captain's chair for purses and valuables, and then we had the full-size garbage and full-size recycling in the helm. So that was really nice. And one of the things that people really love about the boat, especially seasoned boaters, when they would get on the boat at the boat show, it'd be like, really like what you guys have done with the cabinetry. It's really, really better than what we've seen. So by this point in the project, we're all getting a little nervous because it's getting late in the season and we're starting to run out of time. And we still have to get this thing in the water for a water test, and we still have to do a photo shoot. And the lakes are going to be freezing sooner than later. So we were really pushing hard at this point and trying to get that first boat buttoned up in the water and tested. And we finally got it in the water early October, and it worked. Everything worked. It floated right, it handled, it worked, it drove, and so we went ahead and scheduled a photo shoot. And I believe it was October 18th or something like that when we finally, everything came together on photo shoot day, and we got super lucky. It was cold, but it was sunny and it was calm. And we had the guys come out with the drones, and we had the models show up, and we were super lucky to get an excellent photo shoot day. The poor models were freezing, but the photography and the video came out really nice. And we needed that for the boat show. We really needed to have some good video and photography there to show the boat in action, especially because it was electric. People were really curious. How is this boat going to work? You know, how's it going to operate? And so it was really important to us to show it at full speed and show it doing the things that it would do. With the photo shoot done, we all breathed a collective sigh of relief. We knew we were going to make the boat show, but we still had a ton of work to do, and it was a full court press all the way till the boat show. But we debuted in January of 2019 at the Minneapolis Boat Show. And it was a great show for us. We had a ton of interest. Our booth was mobbed the whole show. We got a ton of press and made our first sale at the show, sold our first boat. So that was a milestone for us. And then after the show, we sold several more. But we had decided, early on that we wanted to limit our liability, and we didn't want too many boats out there too fast. So, we only sold a handful the summer of 2019. And we wanted to use 2019 for testing and for buttoning up anything that needed work. So 2019 was a year of feedback from customers and testing. And then 2020, we were going to really expand and really we were really excited to take it to the next level. And then, of course, COVID happened, and all the boat shows were shut down, and basically everything shut down, and then things really changed. That caused some real changes in our business, and we had ownership changes, and so we basically quit building the Stealth at that time, and but we kept the molds. And we stored the molds for several years afterwards, and then started building them again just a couple years ago, and by this time things had really changed. When we first designed the Stealth, there weren't any really good electric outboards on the market, so that really wasn't an option for us. We didn't really want to do our own proprietary driveline, but we didn't really have a choice because there just wasn't anything really good out there that we could use. So, but by now there was, and we've worked with some really good manufacturers. Flux Marine, for one, they make an excellent electric outboard motor, and we've partnered up with them, and we've had some really nice success building a really nice boat with them. They're very powerful, really runs nice. And of course, we're not limited to electric anymore either. We've, now once we made the switch, to an outboard, then we can run a gas motor too. So that has really opened up the market, and so we've sold, both electric and gas models now. And I tell you what, the gas powered one is really nice. And I know that there's some going to be some catamaran people on here watching this say, well, you know, you should have you should have twin motors, and they should be behind the hulls, not one in the center. And of course, we know that, you know, that's very true. But you know, we were traditionally a single engine boat, and when we first switched over to an outboard, it just was the easiest thing to do, is to put a bracket in the middle, and it worked so well, and it's so efficient that you know, it does work great. And we do want to build a twin motor version. I might do that with the one that I have here. And there's so many things that we've improved on the boat since the early days. You know, in the early days, we didn't have a good arched bimini top. We went with a shade sail because I never really liked, you know, the old, you know, the old 3-bow bimini kind of thing, 4-bow bimini kind of thing. I always thought kind of looked like a covered wagon, and I just never thought it went with the design of this boat. But in the meantime, Taylor has come out with a really nice powered arch bimini, and it's kind of a cross between a full-on arch and a powered bimini top. And I tell you what, when we put it on that boat for the first time, it was pretty cool. It was like once we saw it, it was almost like this thing was designed for this boat. I mean, the curve of that arch really went with the shear line curve of the Stealth, and it just came together and made that boat just complete and really nice. And between the combination of that and the outboard, and then we also have added a little windshield to the you know, driver's side. I think it's all just added up. It just keeps getting better and better, and we still build them to this day. And you know, we don't build a lot of them, but yeah, we still build them.
Walk into Bart's office, and he's got a model of a cardboard box.
Or a boat, either one.